Hi, this is Dan Buller, retired electronics engineer, out on the front deck of my houseboat again. It's cold, so I got my heater going. I got my propane refilled, and I might even crank it up a little higher. There we go. It's pretty chilly, but at least I don't have the fog coming out of my mouth. That was just high humidity, though. It's probably colder today than it was then. I want to talk about my favorite job ever. And I've talked about a lot of my jobs. I've traveled to England, Ireland, China, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Taiwan. But my favorite job was actually in Vancouver, Washington. And other jobs, I got paid 6 figures. This job, I got paid 0, nothing. It was a volunteer job at the Vancouver Community Library. And it was my favorite job ever. And it does take a lot of pressure off when you don't have to make any money and you don't have to like really please your boss. But I was certainly trying to please my boss. My boss was Nancy Fasano, and she was a nice lady, mostly. But she ran the volunteers at the Vancouver Community Library, and as a volunteer, my job was to work at the Book Nook, and the Vancouver Library was a beautiful library, a beautiful place, and brand new when I moved in there to work on it, brand new. And the Book Nook was my favorite, and I worked on Tuesdays for a while, and it was 3-hour shifts. I worked 3 hours on Tuesdays, and I worked on Saturdays for a couple of years, and I worked on Fridays and Wednesdays and lots of different days. It was, I would work Saturdays, Sundays, it didn't matter. And I would do all kinds of things for the library. At the Book Nook, my job was to act like a cashier. The Book Nook required that patrons pay $1 for each book, and we had a whole library. It was on a really cool sliding set of bookshelves. It was really neat. And here's a video of it. And so if you started a shift there at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning, you had to open up the Book Nook. And if you ended, you had to close it all up. And it was really easy and fun to do. And so we sit there and we'd take money from patrons who were buying books. And it was right in the lobby of the library too. So when people came in off the street, regular people with their kids and homeless people and everybody else, they would come in and they would walk right past us. And so people would browse the books in the Book Nook for a while. They were donated books. People would bring in donations, boxes and boxes of books, and we would get them all organized and then sent off to Nancy, and Nancy would sort them and decide which books to sell online and which books to sell in the Book Nook. And she made a little bit of money for the library selling books online on Amazon, but mostly it was just books that went on the shelf and were sold to patrons. And it was a great job. I love that job. People would come in and they would look for books, and I would talk to them and chat with them, and we had regulars come in all the time. And one regular, he wanted to write his own book, and I had written my own book, and my wife had written her own book, and so I helped him write his own book and get it published. And one of the security guards there wanted to publish his own book, so I got him set up to go on Kindle Direct and publish his own book, and he actually made quite a few sales. So it was a great job. In addition to that, I helped them move books. Books had to go from the library storage unit to the Book Nook or vice versa, and sometimes we had to move from one storage unit to another. And so I had a van that I would fill it full of books and drive it from one place to another, and trip after trip, taking boxes and boxes and boxes of books. It was a lot of work. So I did a lot of hard labor. Again, never made a dime. and that was fine. Like I said, it was my favorite job. I never made a dime on that job, but it was a great job. Then the library, they knew I was pretty technical, and so they asked me to work with a gal named Zita, who also wrote her own book and got it published, not through Kindle. She went through somebody else, and they were terrible. Which is why I think Kindle is the way to go. But Zita had some expertise in writing web pages and stuff, and so Zita was the leader of this group. I was a member, and some other people were members, but it turned out just me and Zita did it. And we made the FOVCL.org page, which was the Friends of Vancouver Community Library web page. And I built it with me and Zita. We built it. We set up an online donation thing. We set up all kinds of stuff on there. And it was my idea, I came up with an idea called the Book Nook blog. And so every week when I worked at the Book Nook, I would do a blog post or 2 or 3 based on books that were for sale in the Book Nook. And I did some really great stuff. I did one on Peggy Hill. And so there was a book about Catholicism, and there's a great episode of King of the Hill where Peggy pretends to be a nun, and she mistakenly starts to write Mrs. Peggy Hill on the blackboard. Oh, wait a minute. Nuns aren't called Mrs., so she had to change that. But it was great, and I did all these blogs, and I worked with a lot of people. One guy was a communist. He was schooled in library sciences, which is like, give me a break. You might as well do a library. You might as well do a PhD in holding your own dick while you're taking a piss. It's like anybody who can't figure out the Dewey Decimal System. I mean, I figured out the Dewey Decimal System when I was a kid, but he thought it was a big deal. For example, I found a book on the FFT, swear to God. I found a book in the Book Nook about the FFT by Hernandez, Ramirez, I think it was. And that book, I thought, I got to do a Book Nook blog on that, because the goal of the blog was maybe to sell some books, right? To make that book available, let it be known to patrons that the book was available for $1. And I wrote the blog, and I posted it, and Cy looked at it, and he said, I'm going to buy that book. I said, you don't know anything about an FFT. He says, well, I know, but I want the book because it's autographed. And I'm like, Cy, I just wrote an article about it so that people could buy it. And he wants to buy it. I'm like, fine, Cy, buy the book. He was that way. He was selfish. He was a communist. So I worked with him for a lot of years because he was, I swear to God, he was in the same mind as Joe Biden. He really didn't know what was going on. In fact, there was a reason why I was because normally you only need one person to work at the Book Nook. But Cy wanted to work at the Book Nook because he had a degree in library science, whatever that is, holding your own dick while you're pissing. And he wanted to work at the Book Nook, but he couldn't handle patrons, he couldn't handle money, and so I was there to handle all the money and everything. So really, basically, I was his babysitter. And it was wild. But that was a Saturday gig, and so me and Cy would start the shift, and then I would close up the Book Nook and go home. So it was the end of the day, 5 o'clock. It really worked out great. It was a great thing. Now, one thing that nobody at the Book Nook knew, but a lot of the security guards knew, is that I carried a gun. I had a concealed carry permit from the Washington State Sheriff's for Clark County. I had a permit to carry a loaded gun. And so I carried a .357 Magnum on my person at all times when I worked at the Book Nook. And I carried it pretty much all the time anyway, because I'd been, living at Cato's Marina, I'd been like harassed and threatened by people continuously, and so I just carried a gun. And working at the Book Nook, I was working in the lobby the library, and we constantly had homeless people coming in, and so I thought I should be ready. A lot of ladies brought their kids to the library, and they walked right past me, and a lot of homeless came into the book nook. And we had homeless people come in and looking for a bathroom. Well, there was a bathroom on the first floor, but sometimes the cleaning lady was cleaning the bathroom and you couldn't get in there. And so they'd say, is there another bathroom? And I'd say, yes. Take the elevator up to the 4th floor, the 5th floor. Now, it was a 5-story building. Why did I send them to the 4th floor, 5th floor? Because the kids' floor was the 3rd floor. And I didn't dare send homeless people to the 3rd floor where the kids were, because you don't know what can happen to these kids. So I sent them up to the 4th floor or 5th floor. They go take the elevator up and they could go use the bathroom up there. But I never sent a homeless person up to the 3rd floor. In fact, I never sent an adult to the 3rd floor. That's for kids, and that was the kids' floor, and that's just the way it was. So I carried a gun. I had a gun at all times, and all the security guards knew it. And so the security guards were not allowed to carry guns. They had a taser, but that was it. And so all the security guards knew that when I was working, which was only one day a week for 3 hours, that if they needed me, I was there and I would back them up. And in one case, some guy who was a trans guy went into the ladies' bathroom on the 1st floor and it was reported by a patron, not to me, but to someone else at the library. She took her daughter to the bathroom, and this trans guy was in the bathroom shooting up heroin in the bathroom. And so the security guards were alerted. They were sent to go deal with it, and I backed him up. And that's the only time I ever put my hand on my gun. I didn't hold it. I didn't point it at anybody. But I put my hand on it just in case I needed it, because their job was to rout that guy out of the building. And if he came my way, if he came towards the book nook and then into the library, I was going to have to stop him. And I was prepared. So Nancy never knew. Milton, the president of the Friends of Vancouver Library, never knew that I was carrying. But I carried for 6 years. I carried concealed in the library for 6 years and never had a problem. And that's like, a fireman with a fire extinguisher. He's not looking for trouble. Kyle Rittenhouse, he wasn't looking for trouble. He had a medical kit, he had a fire extinguisher, and he had a gun, okay? He wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't looking for trouble, but, I don't want to be caught empty-handed, when trouble shows up. And when I worked in the Vancouver Community Library, it was right downtown, so we got homeless people off the street all the time. The guards, in fact, spent most of their time roaming the library and waking these guys up from their naps, because they would go to the library to take a nap in the warmth of the library. And so they spent all their time trying to wake these people up, and sometimes they had to kick them out because they'd get in fights with other people, or they would harass children or harass ladies or whatever. And so it was my goal to make the library safe and fun and a place to learn. And I learned a lot. Because I worked at a library, I had access to all these books, and I had people come in to donate books, and they'd say, I have this book for you. Do you know what this is? And I'd look at it and see it's Ayn Rand. Oh yes, I know exactly who this is. I know exactly what this is about. I've read this book, and we will treat it with the utmost respect. Of course, I'll put it in a bin and they'll sell it for $1. But still, people would donate their books that they accumulated over the years to the library, and they treated them with great respect. And so I always treated them with really great respect, and I was very careful with them. But I would, when I was not busy, I would read them. And I would, like I said, I would write the blog, and I would put up stuff on the blog to tell people what kind of books we had available, and all kinds of things. There was episode of Jeopardy that had a question, had a librarian on it, and I didn't really associate with the librarians, but the money that I made went to help the librarians, and that was the goal. And the question on the Jeopardy was, this author made them wish there were more than 26 letters in the alphabet. Who are they referring to? And the answer, of course, is Sue Grafton. Sue Grafton did the alphabet murders. Now, maybe you don't know this, but Sue Grafton wrote the alphabet murders because she was so angry at her ex-husband for the divorce they went through that she figured she could come up with 26 different ways to kill somebody. And so she wrote the alphabet murders. A is for alibi, B is for, I forget what it was, but C is for corpse, and D is for deadbeat, and so on. And we listened and we watched and read most of Sue Grafton's stuff, and we would listen to books on tape with Sue Grafton, and it was great. And we had a lot of Sue Grafton books in there, as well as other books. We had a section on fiction and nonfiction, and I worked that library, worked that book nook, and I loved the book nook. That was my favorite job. I don't care if you compare it to traveling to England or Ireland or China or Japan or any of those. Working at the book nook, I got $0 for it. I had to pay money to keep myself in decent clothes and drive there and do my shift, and it was lovely. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was a great job, and I highly recommend getting a volunteer job. You can put it on your resume. In fact, when I got kicked out of Vancouver, I'm like, okay, well, I can't work at the Vancouver Community Library anymore, but I got Nancy and Milton to write me letters of recommendation in case I needed to get another job or something. So I have letters of recommendation from both Nancy and Milton for the job I did at the Vancouver Community Library, because I did an outstanding job, I think. And a lot of people would agree. A lot of my patrons would agree. They miss me now that I don't show up anymore. But that's just the way it is, you know. I can't go to Vancouver. I can't live there, so I'm not going to work there. And I'm sorry, but you know, that's the way it is. But doing volunteer work, you know, yes and no. But if you can find a volunteer job that you like and you enjoy, by all means do it. But don't go volunteer just to have the social credit for volunteering. I did it because I love books. I love books, and I like writing HTML. I wrote HTML with some of the tools that they had, and it was a great job. It was my favorite job ever. So anyway, this is not related to electronics or harmonics or anything else, but if you have a job, if you have a career, you should think about doing some volunteer work. You don't have to, but I wasn't working at the time, and I didn't volunteer when I was working. But if you don't have to work, and I didn't have to work, it's a great thing to do. So anyway, try it. It's really cool. And if you can, go to your local library and check it out. It's kind of cool. So once again, from the river, this is Dan Bullard.